Welcome back to another episode on the Fearless FM podcast. We have another amazing lady and guest for you today. So if you tuned into the last one, you'll know just how spicy these sessions can be. So welcome to the podcast, Peace. If you want to introduce yourself to our listeners, what you do, where you come from.
Hi. So thank you, Becky, for having me on the show today. It's a great honor to speak with you and all our listeners. So I am a nomadic foraging hobbit who, who has I've always been very much a traveler across many dimensions of reality from, traveling around the world and particularly UK and Europe in our van home to traveling in the quantum realms of infinite possibility. And I'm a foraging plant medicine woman who doesn't just forage like regular foragers. I'm foraging for the messages of trust from nature to
Wow.
hear what plants and rocks and trees and beings have to share with us about our world. And working in the quantum realm as well with quantum regression, theta healing, shamanic healing, and all this kind of juicy stuff.
Amazing. You are amazing. So I was talking just before we started um recording this, we were talking about the difficulties for the healing and spiritual side of like business women and business owners that are bringing their gifts and their soul-led work, such as yourself, to the masses on the World Wide Web. And we were talking about the difficulties that are experienced for healers, creatives, and visionaries, what they're having, what they're facing right now. So I really want to get into that because I feel like it's such a big topic, and being a visionary myself, it's not always met with the kind of reception that we hope to receive.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally found it so challenging. You know, when you're asked that elevator question, what do you do? Well, for a start, what do I do? What's that? That's meaningless. Who am
Yeah.
I? What do I give to the world? What is my soul guidance? But so that's like initially there, it's like, what?
It's like a loaded question, isn't it?
So I find it really hard to actually share how amazing stepping into the other realms, the realms that are not seen, and bringing through all the wisdom from soul and the earth. That is such a massive thing to explain to anyone.
Yeah.
And they just think, well, I think you might need to go and get some special medicine or something.
Yeah,
Weirdo.
they're out here a little bit unhinged. But yeah, no, it's true. And when you were just saying that as well, so I am a big fan of the Akatar book series, which is it's all fairy smut. But there is a lot in that where we're reading, like, even myself, we're reading these books and we're able to imagine what that would feel like, and how amazing these realms sound, and the healing and the growth and everything that happens within these stories, that we're almost separating the fact that we have access to things like this here on Earth. We have access to feeling that way, to that level of growth and reconnection. And it's just so interesting to me that we have almost decided that that it's not possible, that it's too woo and it's too spiritual.
Yeah.
And we were saying before as well how we would have practiced all of these things before we had the World Wide Web, before we had any information at our fingertips within seconds. And that's only growing with obviously the use of AI. That it's almost like we've lost our ability and our ways of being able to tap into that we've almost forgotten because we're so quick to look for the quick fix, to look for that quick information. But we also mentioned how that can maybe sort out surface level shit that someone might be going through, but it's not necessarily going to heal on a deeper level, and why your work and the healing work is so important to bring to the table. And it can feel like a whole challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I always say that there's nothing Yeah, I've got good humor and I'm a bit potty mouthed, but that's the surface level stuff, isn't it? But
Yeah,
I'm not your surface level at all. I absolutely adore it when I get into working with somebody and they unravel, you know,
yeah,
willing to open up to all that is possible, and go really, really deep. And that is why I do what I do, is to hold somebody in the depth of their unfolding so that they can create space within to fill
yeah,
their magnificence and their divinity. But people think that's super unattainable and really complicated, and they've got to take hours and hours a day to do X, Y, and Z meditations and flagellations and all kinds in order to, what you may call reach enlightenment or whatever you want to. And that is not the case at all. What I always say is, like, the work that I offer, and many of us in the healing arts service, it is actually more about stripping back to simplicity. There
yeah,
is nothing complicated. All we need to do is drop our attachment to the quick fix, the shiny objects,
yeah,
mind chatter. And this is where people, I really truly feel, find it very hard, is to unplug
yeah.
and get still and get quiet and get present. And that's what scares a lot of people, because they've no idea what that feels like because they've not done it for so long.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that whole, like, I've been on, I guess, a healing journey and a reconnection journey for the last 5 or 6 years now, since my own breakdown and like completely shot regulation and nervous system. And it was my body's way of saying, hey, there's no space anymore in here for you to cram any more in. And I know that in the beginning, it was the whole, oh my God, I've got to fix this. Like something was broken or something was hurt, which it was, but the quick fix wasn't ever going to do anything. And I'd gone down that path and realized the error in doing that, because all that happened is it surfaced again, because I was just so desperate to get rid of this thing and forget about it, that I didn't anticipate that it would come back up to bite me on the backside. And it is difficult kind of sitting and being with yourself. And I love what you said about, it's about creating that space. And it's a conversation that keeps cropping up in the conversations that I've been having with clients and other business owners about, when you declare what it is that you want and how you want to be and how you want to show up and what you want to bring to the table, that can't very well happen unless there's space created for it. And whether that's because I think I sent a newsletter out this week actually, where I was talking about when when you want to create the space for something to enter, whether it's for healing, whether it's for growth, whether it's for that unraveling and unpacking and stripping those layers back, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to get rid, it's only the toxic unhealthy things in your life. Sometimes it's also the things that keep you safe
Yeah.
and comfortable, because it's known, you know what to anticipate, you know what to expect. So going into the unknown, or the void as they call it, like, I really don't like that word,
Oh,
but going into the unknown can feel really scary because you don't know. who you're going to be at the other side of it. You don't know who you're going to be when you've healed certain parts of yourself, or even called back parts of yourself, how you're going to be at the other side. And I think it's that unpredictability that is downright scary.
Yeah, totally. And I'd like to honor your journey, because mine is really similar, and it's more, my entire life has just been, one massive trauma after the other,
Yeah.
since really young. And then 2.5 or so years ago, we had a massive traumatic experience, and it left both Ant and I completely bereft. We didn't know who we were. But the massive gift was it helped us clear away everything that really was not good in
Yeah.
within ourselves. And then that space that was just, it was so expansive, the space, I've always been, immersed in the healing arts, but with all the other stuff that we gather around us throughout the years of, just interactions generally with the big world out there. Being a hobbit, I'm not a fan of it. It's like Mordor for me. It is actually really crazy that you can go through decades of life in this human vessel, gathering stories and limitations and patterns and conditionings, and it becomes, like you said, you're filling your bucket to overflowing, and
Yeah.
you lose the soul, you lose your essence, you lose your light, and you forget what and who you truly are.
Yeah.
And that this is vital, especially right now, the way our world is shaking and shifting, is more than ever we are being called to choose. What
Hmm.
are we truly choosing? And I've just got massive tingles all through my body. And this is my call to everyone, is what are you choosing? Are you
Hmm.
continuing to choose to run at 100 miles an hour, ignoring what your soul is saying, what the earth is saying, showing us, um, and running on empty, literally, you're running on fumes? Or are you going to choose to reset yourself? And that goes across all layers of our existence, physically, mentally, emotionally, and soul. And
Yeah.
more of us are being called up, you know, for this act of service from divine, pure, unconditional love to right now. And that's why I love what I do.
I love that you got tingles, and that they really, I get the shivers when I say resonate, but I cannot think of another word to use. But it really does, especially recently, because I was like literally running at superhuman level last year, and it's not often through choice, which I've discussed with our listeners before. Having such a beautiful army of little wild things in the house that are all neurospicy. There's things in life where I don't get a choice, but I have to do these things. I have multiple meetings and everything. So I don't have a choice but to step up for those. But rather than me building something for myself outside of the role of motherhood that supported everything I needed to do, I was banking on the fact that I had all of this energy all of the time. And yeah, I can do that, no problem. And what I found at the end of last year is I run into that burnout and nervous system dysregulation in a big way. And it was my inner self saying, "Whoa, bitch, you need to slow things down a little bit. You're not an octopus. You cannot do all of these things." And I reflected on it. I had some time out, maybe 8 weeks, I think. I had some time out where I didn't really pick up my laptop. Wasn't really posting much. I was running my community, and that was about it. I stepped away from any calls within the communities that I'm in. And it just allowed me to take stock of which plates I was spinning that really I could either let them smash the floor or put them down. And what I learned in that was I started evening classes. So I have just graduated the first term of burlesque dance, and we've been doing silk fans for the past month, which have been interesting learning how to use those. I got back into my hula hooping, which I'm hoping at the end of the year I'll be doing a performance with a light up hula hoop, which is awesome. But the biggest thing, and I think as well, which we can probably unpack a little bit, is the where we believe that healing and rediscovering yourself needs to be really complicated. You mentioned that earlier, but actually how to bring it in, what things we can do to bring that in. And for me, I got into polymer clay craft, so making jewelry from clay. And it wasn't with the intention of, oh, if I'm really good at it, I could sell it. But it was the intention of just being with myself, allowing that creativity to flow, whether it looked good or not, just really enjoying the whole process of bringing something to life from a block of clay. And what I found is it's so mindful and so calming just sitting. I didn't even have music on, and that's a big thing for me because I'm a music junkie. But just sitting and being with, or crochet. So a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, is there anything you can't do?" I'm like, I'll try my hand at anything so long as it's mindful, so I can sit and be with myself and let my mind do whatever it needs to do, whilst creating these beautiful pieces of jewelry. And it's like, oh, look what I made. So I think there's a big misconception in terms of what people think they need to do to be able to do the work, to access the work that you do. So,
Mm.
what are some other things that people can do that maybe they've overcomplicated in their mind in terms of how difficult and all the different things that they need to start doing.
I feel that, and that's really key what you just said right at the end there, what they feel they need to start doing. So if we reframe that from doing to being, because this is the big thing, isn't it? We're always busy doing,
Yeah.
and we forget the being. And that is the essence of stripping it back and uncomplicating the hell out of it. Because
Yeah.
when we cease to do, that's a big trigger for a lot of people. I'm not doing enough. I should have done this. I should have done that. Oh, I'm never going to get anywhere if I don't, blah, blah, blah. We know the narrative. Yet
Yeah.
there's a lot of um, really important elements to being. And what I always say is, if I'm not working one to one with somebody in a session, like we're talking now, I'll say, well, have you got a garden? And if they say yes, I'll go, have you got a seat outside or somewhere you can just perch? And they'll go, yeah. And I'll go, okay. So the first step of being is to make your favorite drink, whether that's a cup of herbal tea, coffee, cacao. Obviously, it's cacao with me.
Yep.
And go and take yourself outside into your garden or the park, wherever's nature is nearest to you, and
Mm.
just sit, close your eyes, smell what you're going to drink. So there's all these little steps that start to unravel here and let
Yeah.
it unwind. Like you can pull a toilet roll and it starts to just unravel everywhere. Yeah.
Oh, we have that frequently in my house.
And that is where I'll often sort of gently say, if they're not done that. Amazing, so many people don't even
Yeah.
go and sit in their garden. And then we take it a little bit step further, you know, but just sitting with a brew and closing your eyes, smelling it, that have that mug that is your favorite mug. Yeah, so the simplicity of taking your favorite cup with you into the garden, or a flask and a cup out into a park or a forest somewhere, and
Yeah,
just sitting, smelling, closing your eyes, listening, and then starting to drink your drink, just listening all the time, opening your senses to different noises and the rustle of the leaves in the trees and the buzzing of insects and things like that. And then opening your eyes and noticing where your eyes are captivated. And that's the kind of mindful practice that is so easy,
yeah,
doesn't cost you a penny.
no,
And it's the beginning of coming home, is how I call it.
absolutely. And I think as well, there's this idea that it's too simple, and it's not going to fix anything. It's not going to get rid of the problem. And I think, like, back in my early days of healing, I was very much like that skeptic, if you like, that would rubbish the idea of mindfulness because it was like, well, I'm still thinking things, so it doesn't work. Or, nature nurtures. So I was often rolling my eyes at the doctors and saying, what good's that going to do? Because I think we get into this idea that we're expecting immediate results, and to be able to do something once or twice and wave goodbye at it, and that's that, and I can go repeat the pattern again. When actually what you've just described, being in the garden, interestingly, we had our garden all done, like redone over last year, and we do have a section that's a child-free section where it's got benches and it's under a big tree, and it's nice when it's sunny to just go sit out there and be with yourself, because we are human beings, not human doings. And just the way that you were, describing that whole taking your drink into the garden, the effects of that, not just with the unrolling of the toilet rollers, as it were, but just how much we're giving our nervous system the chance to just calm itself down just a little bit, even if it's once a week, just giving yourself the chance for your body to calm itself down. Because I think we also mentioned before we started the podcast how these days, like, the world, like, collectively, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, is so unhealthy. There's such high levels of cortisol in everyone,
Mm.
which it's a frequent topic on, even on TikTok,
Mm.
and so many people pushing these remedies. Or you just need to take this and you need to take that to reduce your cortisol levels, that we're not actually looking at businesses or business owners and women such as yourself and healers who can actually help you to regulate that, to heal your system on all levels, instead of popping some supplements to get rid of the cortisol, when actually that would have been a symptom, not
Mm.
the cause. And I think so many of us are treating the symptoms of things without taking a closer and a deeper, more nurturing look at the cause. And what we was talking about is how difficult it is for women and people such as yourself putting your offerings out into the world, doing what you feel called to do, when you're bumping up against this idea, well, it's nature and it should be free, well, it's mental well-being or emotional healing, it should be free. Like, that's definitely something I've encountered in my early few years of business is, well, this should be free or it should be next to nothing, because if you charge, then somehow it's selfish.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we've all heard the stories. We've all heard all these reasons why people don't value, the healing arts, whatever they are, and there's a lot of devaluation within the, healers as well, that they feel it's wrong to charge, more than £35 for an hour and a half session, just for one example. And while affordability in our world that is in financial crisis, which is the surface level stuff, we see it as a financial crisis, but we know that it goes to the very heart of corruption in society, throughout the whole, because we've lost sight of who we are, and it cycles back to, we have lost our divinity. We have
Yeah.
lost, right from, the onset of religion, being told that if you miss mass on a Sunday, you're going to go straight to hell. Those are the words that I listened to with Neil Donald Walsh's work with Conversations with God. They were mortal sins if you didn't go to
Yeah.
mass. You were going straight to hell forever. That's just one example. And it's just, that's how corrupt human doings have created the mindset within all of us. And we've become
Yeah.
reactive rather than flow, ease, grace, and responsive. And we've
Mm.
lost the heart. We've lost coming from the heart. And so many trillions and billions of us do not know what love feels like. I'm going to let that sit. We have lost the feeling of what love is and how it feels to fully love yourself. I mean, what the fuck is that? Love myself? Are you?
Yeah.
Well, if you can't and you don't, I've got shivers again. I get dead emotion. And we've all been here. We're all here.
Mm.
We don't truly know what loving ourselves is, let alone feels
Yeah.
like. So therefore, how can we hold space and love anyone else in their soul light of divinity? So this is really at the very center of everything that is coming forward from my beingness, my all that is, connecting right back to that. And nature, nature and unconditional love is everything. When you've got those two and you're working on that all the time, I don't mean like hours and hours going, oh my God, I've got to do this, I've got to love that. That's just ridiculous. That's again reactivity and mind conditioning. It's when we let go and we surrender and we open, but it takes time,
Yeah.
God, I'm 57 and it's only now becoming flow and easy for me to love this beautiful being wholly with all my little bits and pieces,
Yeah.
little things that this human experience brings into my field of awareness. And then, most of it I just go, well, that can fuck off. That doesn't resonate with me, so it can go and fuck off. Thank you.
It can fuck off. It doesn't
Yeah.
vibe with me. I love that.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be where your stage in life as well, I think some of our listeners are really going to love that, because I've had conversations as well, even like there's been a lot of conversations I've been having recently about, starting over and reconnect. At what point does a human being decide that it's too late for them? Like, since when did we set that rule and limitation on ourselves? And I love what you said about we've forgotten what it feels like to love ourselves, because there is such this big belief that to love yourself means you are full of yourself and you're arrogant and all of these awful attachments that comes to self-love. But you are absolutely right. If you cannot love yourself, how can you show anybody else how to love you? Or how can you love another if you don't know what that feels like for yourself? And that actually really did get me. So I got shivers the same time as you did when you shared that, because that's the a kind of epiphany, if you like, that I had, that kicked off that, when people talk about we have to break down to break through, and it's used in such a blasé way sometimes that I think people don't actually realize how powerful that it can be. And that's certainly what I went through, because I was suddenly faced with, at that point, I only had 3 children. So 2 children ago, I was faced with this whole idea. Well, somebody asked me the question, what do you do for yourself that you love to do? I'm like, well, I cook for the children and I take them here, and everything was centered around being the mother and the woman in the family. And I was like, no, what do you do for yourself? And I was there trying to rack my brain, and I could not give an answer in terms of what did I do for myself, because I had forgotten myself. That sounds very Alice in Wonderland.
Yes.
Forgotten myself. I'd forgotten what I loved. I became a mother very young, so I hadn't really given myself the chance to explore and like yourself, a history of trauma. So I'd never really given myself the chance to explore. I'd just been on this path of being a warrior and dealing with whatever shit life wanted to throw at me. And for so long, that was such a badge of honor and an armor that I used, which is probably why a lot of women see me as the kind of warrior type. So it's taken some time to take that armor off. And when I couldn't share what it was that I loved to do, or what I did for myself, or what I enjoyed, it was such a big wake up call, because all of a sudden I was like, what am I going to do when my children grow up and they leave home? And what am I going to do then? I'm not going to be needed. And that, to go through that when you are only just turned 30 is a lot. Um, so this is like 8 years ago. So I went on this mission then, after the breakdown and healing and reconnecting, calling all of these parts of myself back that had been just forgotten or left to the wayside. That from that, I suppose you can call it that phoenix moment, from everything came this version of me that had decided I wasn't just one role. I wasn't just one version. I could do other things. And it has been this journey, as you say, of rediscovering that love for myself, rediscovering the things that I love, the things that I enjoy doing despite what anybody else thinks. Because there's such a pressure to belong,
Yeah.
and a fear of stepping out of that and being ostracized. I think that there's such a fear of that happening and being alone. When actually, I think the ultimate is to be able to be alone and be absolutely fine with your own company.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we're never alone. And this is a big revelation as well. And goes back to, you don't ever have to do anything single-handedly, you know, but sometimes because we don't see how connected we are, we feel that we're alone.
Yeah,
And we don't ever feel sometimes that we can even just say, can you help me? I've lost my mind a bit and I've got off track, you know, because
yeah,
the more overwhelmed we get, we're kind of like headless chickens running or spinning those plates, like you said earlier, you know, and then the plates start slipping off and you run into, you know, you're constantly trying to do all this. And then you get the crash like we've experienced, where the whole
yeah,
world strips out from underneath you. And in a way, that's a blessing. Everything is a blessing. And that's one of the great things of working in quantum healing, is knowing that every situation that we come into, every single moment of every single day, has a message for us and is a great gift. Even those awful, awful challenges and traumas, they are here to help us become. We
yeah,
need to come back to that reset point of where we go, oh my God, I'm not just this, you know, I'm not just Peace, I'm not just Becky, I'm not
yeah,
just doing all these things. I'm part of something far bigger.
Absolutely. And, as you were speaking out, my brain, my lovely, wonderful, spicy brain just pops up with something really random. When you was talking about earlier as well about the value and the price that we put on this work, where many people out there are expecting to pay peanuts for this level of healing. And actually, I don't think it's the fact that others aren't valuing the work that you do and healers can do, but actually, it's more that they don't value themselves enough
Yeah.
to pay well for this level of healing. So was, I mentioned earlier I'd had therapy, and that was quite pricey per session. And after being signed off, I had no reason to question why I was being signed off, because I valued myself enough to pay for someone that I felt had the credentials, the experience, and the qualifications to be able to help me. Otherwise, if I'd have been going out there looking for, say, I don't know, counselling sessions, I mean, even those donation based are like 40, £45. And I don't think I'd have got the same level of expertise. I wouldn't have gotten through what I got through as quickly or with a little bit more ease than I would have done. And that's because I valued my emotional and mental well-being more, and how I wanted to feel at the end of that. I didn't want to have to keep going through sessions. And I've been doing some childhood trauma healing with this incredible lady, and every session, I don't think a childhood memory is going to pop up, but it does, just a really random memory. And it's because there's something that's been healed within my childhood that I've healed within me in the here and now, that it's surfaced this memory to say, right, you can let this one go now. It does, and again, it brings it back around to that creating space, because I've let go of that story, I've let go of that memory, I've healed what needed to be healed, took the message that needed to be taken. And it then, so again, it comes back down to the whole, are we actually valuing ourselves enough to invest in this work, to pay well for this work? Because I don't think the issue is with how much you're charging or somebody else charges for this work. It really comes down to how we're loving ourselves and valuing ourselves to pay for it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You speak with people with the language that they know, don't
Yeah.
you? And then it's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, oh, I'm not going to pay that for that. Why would I do that? Oh my God, but it does come back down to worthiness, which is one of our core wounds.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy of healing that. I'm not worthy of paying that person to hold this session with me. And we can run away from it until we can't.
Yeah.
It's like when you get dropped to the floor with an illness because you've run away from what you needed to address for too long, and then you're in a hospital bed.
Yeah.
That isn't a wake-up call we really want to have.
No. It's interesting because that is something I've spoke about multiple times over the years, that if you don't listen to what you need, your body and your system is going to collude together and put you in a position where you're going to be forced to slow down. And actually, it's going to take more healing and more rest and more regulating your system to get back to where you were. And the issue we have is we don't learn our lesson. We do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again. But each time, as I've definitely learned this time around, I have rotator cuff issues. Is I can't keep resting and it feeling better, and then I push it again until I need to rest again. Like, what am I learning there? Am I learning that I keep taking for granted what my body's limitations? I mean, many people might think my age is young, but I'm certainly not as young as I used to be being able to do the things that I need to do. I walk a bit slower, I'm not as flexible, I'm not as energetic as I used to be. And it's that realization recently that, well, I'm like 2 years off being 40. So, you know, I need to start listening to my body, and I've started nourishing it. Started taking magnesium, the 3-in-1. I've started looking at lion's mane and different supplements that I can take that just support where I'm at now instead of repeating constantly, because then I'm just suffering life. And then as a collective, we're just suffering
Which
life when
life's about. You've got to suffer, you've got to toil, you've got to do this, you've got to be a good citizen.
everything has to be hard work. Like, good things come to those who work hard for it. Like, nah, no, I'm not subscribing to that one.
But we did for so long, didn't we?
Yeah.
I like to reframe that as work hard.
Yeah.
You
And
work hard, and then everything, when we get into the good habits, there is ease and grace that flows through. But you
yeah,
can recognize when you start slowing down and listening when you're dropping out of alignment, because it comes down to stepping into alignment first by dropping all the weighty burdens and smoothing out what is icky and frazzled. Doesn't have to take long at all. It's just how much we devote our mindfulness to it in order to simplify our day and compartmentalize, the busy areas, like especially with parenting. You
yeah,
have certain things that you have to do. If you work a job, you've got that to balance, and then you've got and all these things. So, but there is an easier way of smoothing out the frazzled edges
yeah,
and then stepping in a second. And when we're working in with plant intelligence and the quantum field, you learn really quickly to shapeshift and jump into
yeah,
different vibrational frequency where you do all the things, but you're doing them with ease because it all
yeah.
flows. But that's the thing, we have to remember how to do that.
Yeah, and we've forgotten. Before the World Wide Web, we would have been accessing these without realizing it. We would have, before devices and phones and AI and things at our fingertips, we would have been accessing, which is why I think, like I said earlier, I think as a collective, we're so much more unwell and unhealthy now, especially like emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I think we're so unwell now that we've forgotten that we have all of this readily available. It's just such a fast-paced world that we want the quick win, we want the quick fix. And I suppose it is human nature, but I'm going to leave you listeners with this one thing and it's a phrase I have carried around for years through my OCD journey, and it's a Jungian phrase. And he says, you know, what we resist persists and grows greater. Well, I adapted that and saw it as we have two choices. We can either go with long-term pain for short-term gain when we're looking at bypassing and ignoring what our inner selves are telling us, or we can opt for the work that you do in the world and other healers do in the world and spiritual practices for the short term, as much as it sounds awful, is for the short term pain, for the longer term gain. Do we want to keep going round in cycles, healing a little bit and then getting back to pain, healing a little bit and then having to heal it again? Or do we want to once and for all go through this journey, be with ourselves, uncover what needs to be uncovered so that you can experience longer term being true to yourself, loving yourself, valuing yourself, seeing that glorious magnificence that you talk about, bringing that to the world. Like, I don't know about you, but I think I'd rather go for the short term pain so that I could have that for life. Like, yeah,
Yeah, because we're needed, every one of us that have stepped into this, you could call it a spotlight if you want, whatever you want to, whatever terms you want to do, you've stepped up. When we step up, it's massive. When we
yeah,
go, no, I'm done with that's not in my world anymore. I'm choosing to step up And what you were saying earlier, if you are seen to be embodying everything that you desire, you're called, oh, you're full of yourself. And you know what? That's a massive compliment.
Yeah.
But he
What else is supposed to be full of?
says to you, you are so full of yourself, aren't you? I go, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Because if I'm full, I serve from a place of fullness.
Yeah.
And that is a phrase that I took from what is it, the book called Infinite Healing or something. I'll post it somewhere. I'll have to grab it off my audio. But yeah, she was the author is always saying, so you can't serve from anywhere less than fullness,
Yeah.
because you're not holding that space for others, because
Yeah.
filling your own cup first. And that goes
Um,
with life, doesn't it?
it does. And I think I posted about this recently, actually, where I said if you're not full of yourself, who else are you supposed to be full of? Somebody else's idea, somebody else's demand, somebody else's expectation. So actually, we need to be full of ourselves. I love that. And it's all that people are saying when they say that is you're just simply reflecting back at them where they're not doing it for themselves. It's disrupting their own stories. It's mirroring back at them the truths that they're telling themselves that aren't true. So it challenges people, and challenging people is scary. But it's been amazing having you on. Is there an offer or something you have coming up that you want to share about? I've got a couple of minutes left before, I've got to go and collect one of my little darlings.
Yeah, so I obviously, and this is gonna sound like I'm full of myself. Thank
Got
you.
it.
Beth Alexis from Schitt's Creek. Oh yeah, thank you. Um, I had somebody say to me, you're starting a movement. And I'm like, when somebody tells you you're doing something and it's big, and then you go, oh shit.
Yeah,
I've got my beautiful membership community called Inner Sanctum. And like we are on a journey. And when we set out to do any creativity, we think it's going to be one thing. And then when you start, it becomes something so much greater than you could ever imagine. What Inner Sanctum is one of those things. It's something that is becoming.
yep,
And it's for all the healers, all the mystics, all the ones that have been called too much for whatever reason. The highly sensitive beings is why Inner Sanctum was created, because I am all of those things and I welcome every aspect of myself to express exactly as she wishes to. And sometimes that's messy. Sometimes it's like, I'm an ethereal being in the forest like Galadriel, and I love that as well. I like being in that place. Um, and it's a place to firstly unfold
yeah.
and turn up as you are in all your color, in all your messiness, in all your snot, and
I
become
love.
who you are meant to become, a divine being of light. And that sounds dead fluffy and woo-woo, but if we can't get dead fluffy and woo-woo, we're never going to access those gifts and that depth of who we truly are. It's only woo-woo to those that don't understand.
Exactly. Yeah, people fear what they don't understand. So
That's
I
okay.
I love the sound of Inner Sanctum. So if you are listening, make sure you check out the podcast description because I'll be popping the links
Yeah.
in there so you can go check out more of Peace's work and a link to go and follow her and connect with her on socials. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I have really, really loved. I think we could have continued for hours, but if the duty calls. So thank you to all of my listeners for tuning in once again, and I'll be looking forward to bringing you the next episode.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Becky. Have an amazing day, everyone.
You're welcome. Right, where's my